Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. My name is Josh. I am the Injured Outdoorsman. I'm here with Allan Peterson. He is the pastor of Lyons Evangelical Free Church. First of all, thank you so much for doing this interview.
You're certainly welcome. Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
And why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background?
Okay, well, I guess my main professional identity is pastor. I've been pastor of this church for a long time. Along with that, actually, while I was doing this, I was also able to complete a degree in clinical psychology.
Okay.
And then also as part of this, I was able to be involved in the reserve as a chaplain in Reserve Special Forces for about 10 years.
Okay.
And
awesome.
Also got to retire as a chaplain from the military. So that's kind of my background.
Okay, good deal. What is, I guess, the degree in, or what was the highest level? Was it a master's, PhD?
Well, it's called a doctor's psychology degree. It's a PhD level degree in clinical psychology.
Okay.
Right.
And your military background, were you enlisted, officer?
My prior service in the early 70s was an infantry officer for 3 years.
Okay.
And then I was out for 9, and I came back as a chaplain in 1984. Like I said, I got to be a part of the 12 Special Forces group at the time, which is gone.
You have to be incredibly mentally tough to make it through Special Forces training, to make it through the education that you did, and then to be able to counsel people and pastor people through some of the toughest times in their lives. Do you want to touch on a little bit about mental toughness, especially if you are injured, if you're disabled, if your life is completely altered? How do you move forward?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think as we were thinking about this earlier, I think one of the things that comes to my mind is the issue of, you could call it failure. And actually, my early military career wasn't the greatest, you know. And it's interesting. I mentioned that to one of the NCOs at my Reserve Special Forces group. He said, "Well, I got fired once." He says, "Well, if you haven't been fired, you probably haven't done very much." and that was a kind of a really helpful statement to me to recognize and realize that well, nobody's perfect. Nobody gets all A's all the time.
Sure.
Nobody gets anywhere worthwhile without some failure.
Absolutely.
And some mistakes. And I think sometimes we have this image of people in, well, let's say in Special Forces or something else, that these are people who never make a mistake, which is far from the truth. They're very human people, and on the other hand, they don't generally take a mistake or a failure as final, right? And
sure. It's that never quit mentality.
It kind of is, and well, I'll say that when it came back around, where I had the opportunity to get back in the military as a chaplain, I wasn't sure I was going to get back at all. And when I had the opportunity to get back, and then I had an opportunity, I had my supervisory chaplain said, "I have this Special Forces group that I can't get anybody to take." I said, "I'll go," you know, because I'd already had some background with special operations a little bit, and I thought, wow, this is a great opportunity. And I guess what I would say, you know, talk to the mental toughness part of it, is that I really felt that this, my main identity really is as a Christian. And that's really the core of who I am. That's why I'm in the church. And when I was in the military, I was a believer then. And these were doors that opened for me. I really had a sense that this is a door that's opening of opportunity for me. And sure, there's hardship involved. There's probably failure involved. There's embarrassment. There's shame. All these things that go with it. But there's a purpose behind it for me that I get to fill out, that maybe in a kind of unique way I get to do this and other people don't. You know, and not that I'm better than other people, but this is just, I really felt blessed in a way to be able to get into the 12th group and be a part of that for the last 10 years of its active life, you know.
Sure.
I really felt to be able to be with those folks and do the things they did, to get the glory badges on your shirt and all that cool stuff. But really, just to step into that purpose that I think God had for me. That was, and when you talk about the mental toughness part of it, it's not hard to have that when you got a sense of purpose.
Absolutely. And you and I have been talking about that for a long time. My identity was as a park ranger, was as a law enforcement park ranger, was as an EMT, a wilderness EMT, a wildland firefighter. And then when I got injured, all that was taken away. And I was, for a while, purposeless.
Yeah.
And that was some of my darkest times, was when I didn't have that sense of purpose, and was really questioning God. Yes, I still believed in him. Yes, I still believed that he had a plan for my life. But I said, why? And what is the purpose of this? And I think when you have that background, when you have that solid background of faith, even though you might not know your purpose, and even though you might not know why your life is completely altered, you can still trust God. And I really pity those who don't have that foundation when something like this comes along, because why not commit suicide?
Yeah. I think it's, for one thing, it's a common experience for almost anyone who grows up to hit a point in their life where they're kind of disillusioned and they're disappointed and life doesn't go the way they expect. That's what happened to me in my initial military career. It was kind of, I hit the wall, sort of, and it was a disillusioning, and it was also demoralizing and confusing time. And it caused some issues in my life to kind of recirculate. I had to really look at some certain things in my life. And it was a very useful thing. It took a lot of time to get through the feelings and, the pride, that went with it. But again, sometimes those things, if you're willing to face them, make you that much better down the road. Right? Sure. Yeah.
And there's that old adage, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and to where, I'm in a wheelchair half the time, and physically that might not be the case, but mentally, I think that making it through failure, making it through hardship, and having that solid faith in God, God will bring you out of it, and you'll be stronger because of it.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's the surviving of that, as a young person, a young man, let's say, coming up through school, and you prepare yourself for a certain profession, and whether it's a profession of arms or it's something else, you say, well, this is what I'm going to be now, I'm planning to be this, and all of a sudden it's gone. Especially if you kind of fail at it, you kind of have a point in your life where you say, but then you realize, hey, I'm still here. What am I going to do now? And you make up something else.
Sure.
You kind of plot a new course and you say, well, I guess I'll try this then.
Yep.
And sometimes it goes pretty well. Sometimes it doesn't. And I think part of the mental toughness thing is that the human spirit just doesn't die very easily. It just really doesn't. And people most of the time don't just lay down and quit. They just really don't.
Sure.
And almost, very few people get to the point in their lives where they just lay there and don't do anything.
There's that Navy SEAL adage, or motto, not dead, can't quit.
Yeah.
Right? And as long as you have breath in you, you can't quit. You got to keep moving forward.
You remind me of the Monty Python sketch. Did we talk about this?
I don't think so.
The Monty Python sketch where it's during the plague, and I forget which of the guys. He's dragging the cart of corpses through the village. He said, bring out your dead, bring out your dead. And one of the other guys comes out. He says, I've got one. And okay, but the guy on his back says, I'm not dead yet. There's still hope for me. I'm not dead yet.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
And no matter if you're hanging on by a thread, you aren't dead yet.
Yeah.
Keep going.
If you're still conscious, or you wake up and you're still here, and you're not, I don't know. And a lot of times I think when you think about some of the situations you could be in, that if you're not in the position that someone else is in, you know, hey, I've got, what do I have, right? Well, I have maybe a couple bucks left. I'm not in jail, or maybe I am, but I'm not wet, cold, and miserable, not being shot at.
Sure.
I've never been shot at, by the way, but you know, things could be worse. And by the way, I like to say, don't ever say things could be worse, because they can.
Yes, sir.
Always. You don't want it to get worse than it is, right?
One of the biggest struggles for me since I've been injured is discipline, because my condition can be so limiting. Mm-hmm. You know, 1 minute I'm up, I'm cleaning the house, I'm cooking, whatever, and the next I might be passed out, mm-hmm. Or in so much pain I can't get off the couch or can't leave the bed for the entire day. And even walking to the bathroom can be excruciatingly painful. How do you build discipline? Because, you know, you see Special Forces soldiers, you know, they do PT by themselves, mm-hmm. Because they're disciplined enough to do it by themselves, right? To where Big Army has to PT all together. Mm-hmm. How do you build and maintain that discipline through things like that?
Well, I think partly has to do with your sense of purpose again. I never was on a team, but I think the guys in Special Forces particularly don't want to hold the team back. That's why they do PT on their own.
Sure. Because
they don't want to get put in a situation where they're going to be the guy that's dragging everybody back. Not that they have to always be the guy in front, but they don't want to be the guy in the back. At least that's my feeling. That you don't want to be the guy that's holding everybody else back. And so there's a sense of purpose to it. I still do PT, but it's partly because, well, now I'm a pastor, and I want to, for one thing, it helps me to kind of do my prayer time as well, but also kind of keeps me mentally clear and fit to be able to do the things I do too. And I guess it gives me a longer shelf life, or a longer lifespan in the work I'm doing. I think it's also a matter of just taking care of yourself. But the discipline part, I think when you relate that to an injury or a sickness or a disability, and by the way, when you get to be older, like I'm getting older, something's going to get you anyway.
Sure.
And so the question is, I think we ask ourselves, am I using this as an excuse not to do what I should do? And I guess what I would say to myself in that regard is like, well, if it's something I can do, then I get to choose whether I should do it. But if I can't do it, then it's not my problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You shouldn't feel bad if you can't. You should probably feel bad if
you could do it,
and you know, you're being lazy,
and you know in your mind you could do it, but you're just using it as an excuse. On another hand, is that, well, maybe you can take a break.
Sure.
Maybe this. You're trying to discipline yourself so much that you're not giving yourself a break either. You know, and I think maybe part of that is like, would you give somebody else a break in this situation? Yeah, I would. Well, maybe you can give yourself a break too.
Yeah, have grace for yourself.
Yeah, right. And you know, don't expect from yourself what you would not expect from anybody else. Of course, that's another issue a lot of people have. It's like, I wouldn't expect anybody. I got to be the top guy all the time. Like, maybe not.
Sure. One of my good friends is in 3rd Special Forces Group, and he's been riddled with injuries since getting in. And he started going to Delta Force or CAG several times, but he's just been riddled with injuries. But it's just amazing to see him work through that, do his own PT, because he doesn't want to let his team down. Mm-hmm. You know, he tore his groin, he messed up his back, and several other things, but he keeps pushing through it. You know, he doesn't want to go on light duty, but, you know, he knows how to limit himself, but he also knows how to push himself to keep that team camaraderie, to keep that team going in potential life and death situations.
Yeah, and I think when, you know, you touch on the area of limitations, is that we all have them. I don't think it's exactly the tone of what the comment was, but I remember one of the Dirty Harry movies, maybe the first one, where he says, you're a good man, whatever the guy's name was, and a good man always knows his limitations. I've kind of taken that mantra on it. It's a good thing to know what you can't do.
Sure.
And that's another one of the things I think that people who are trying hard to maximize themselves is to test their upper limits. You know, can I run that fast? Can I jump that high? Can I endure that long? That it's partly a test for yourself to see what are my limitations. And then once you know what they are, then you operate within them. You know, I'm not going to, you know, like this fellow you're talking about probably understands his limitations. And by the way, the team probably accepts him that way.
Sure.
Right? They're okay with him. Hey, this guy pulls his weight, so it's not a problem, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So after someone faces a life-altering experience, be it a divorce, be it an injury, be it getting fired, or even a midlife crisis, what are some, if you could briefly touch on, you know, some tips for mental toughness, finding a new purpose, and how to have hope moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Hope's a big thing. And like I said, I think hope dies pretty hard in most people. Most people find a reason to be around. And hope is something that a lot of times I think people can't define. They can't pin it to something concrete, but they know they got to keep going. And and in the face of something like, I don't know, like you said, like a divorce, for instance, it's disorienting. I think that's the point I was getting at before. It's disorienting. It's like you're confused because you don't have the same apparent goal that you had before. But you look at the pieces of it. Let's say you got kids. Well, you're still a dad, right? You still got kids, right?
Sure.
So I think a lot of people at that point say, forget it. It's too much hassle. But if you think of it from the kid's viewpoint, you say, yes, but he still needs dad, and I'm still the only dad he's got.
Absolutely.
So go ahead.
We were just talking today. I'm doing ketamine and TMS treatments for my condition, for my CRPS, and it's absolutely the most horrifying experience I've ever been through. But I'm continuing to do it, and I think it's worth it. Not so much if I was by myself, but for my wife and for our future together and our potential family, it's worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, for instance, let's just say a divorced dad. Well, okay, now you have to be a different kind of dad than you were before, but you're still a dad, and there's a new way maybe to live out that identity that you have and the responsibilities you have to other people. I think that's another part of it. You're talking about responsibilities you have to other people. Just because you got injured, just because your life's been altered, it doesn't mean you don't have responsibilities anymore.
Absolutely.
And hence excuse not to live those responsibilities out. And most of us have those kinds of, I think those responsibilities are the things that can help us keep us grounded. One person I heard once said, well, what's my identity? Well, it's pretty hard to identify yourself apart from the relationships and responsibilities that you have to other people. Pretty hard to, what am I? Who am I? Like, well, yeah, but you kind of define yourself in those relationships to other people.
Sure.
And one of the things, like, what we change is when someone's injured, can't do their job anymore, that means their network of responsibility has been altered too.
We had been talking about this before, but a lot of guys who are cops, that's not what they do. That's who they are, right? So they're a protector. They're carrying in church. They're carrying everywhere they go. They're carrying at the mall because, the first duty station I was at, my lieutenant told me, you took that oath today. That oath doesn't stop when you take off that uniform.
Right. Right.
And I think it's the same way for the military as well.
Yeah.
And it's kind of becomes your identity. And then once you retire, or if you get injured, or you have to do something else,
Yeah.
a lot of these guys are struggling with, hey, what's my purpose now?
Right. But if you keep in mind, what are your responsibilities? Do all your responsibilities go away just because you've been injured or fired or retired or divorced or whatever? Well, not necessarily. Do those people still need you? Maybe they do. Just because you can't shoot straight anymore, I don't know. Are there other ways to protect people? Maybe so.
Sure.
And maybe you got to get a little creative. But you're being creative with doing this, so that's a way, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And doing this has God's shown me a purpose, at least for the time being, to try and help you guys. And when you do something greater than yourself,
Yeah.
you find a purpose greater than yourself.
And you can also be creative. When you find there's a purpose, you tend not to give up. You tend not to take no for an answer. You tend to take the unconventional path if the conventional path is blocked for you.
Sure.
You might have a script, you might have a model that you're following, but when you can't follow the script or the model any longer, you may go off script or find a different model or invent one in order to achieve a similar purpose. That's kind of like persevere, adapt, and overcome, right?
Yes, sir.
So, yeah.
For all you Marines out there.
Sorry, Marines.
Eating,
I didn't get it right.
crayons.
I probably didn't get it right. But
Some fun questions
All right.
to end with. In your Special Forces training, did you learn how to hip fire an M60 like Rambo?
No, but as chaplain, I got to get orientation on M60. So,
Okay.
It didn't hurt. It didn't hurt when I got out to the range with some of the guys in the teams when we were running an M60 range that the chaplain could shoot fairly decent. Not that they expected me to, but it didn't hurt.
Sure. The first and worst vehicle wrecks I was on, I was out in Wyoming, and a missionary family of 9 who was on vacation. Their camper got caught up in the wind and ended up flipping and taking the vehicle that they all were in. And there were just bodies lying everywhere. Pretty horrific and even hard to talk about right now. But there was an Army chaplain who got out of his car and came walking up and said, "I'm a chaplain. I'm trained in emergency..." What's the word?
Yeah, emergency, critical incident. I forget.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, "How can I help?"
Yeah.
And there was this one girl in her 20s, didn't have a scratch on her, and she's just seeing the bodies of her family strewn about.
Yeah.
Some are already gone, some are being worked on. It's going to take another half hour for another ambulance to show up, because we were the only ambulance within 60 square miles. And she was just freaking out. And I thanked God for that chaplain. And he was able to talk with her and counsel her and talk her down. And so thank you so much for what you guys do. It's often overlooked. But the role of a chaplain is so important.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Appreciate that. It's a good thing to do. In case there's anybody out there who's thinking about that, a lot of times I think gunfighters don't always think about the chaplain as being that significant until they need them. And so if there's somebody out there that's thinking about that as a possible career change or something, it's a good thing, right?
Well, good deal. Thank you so much for this interview. I learned a whole lot. Hope you guys got something out of this interview as well. Again, my name is Josh. Thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, I'll see you outside.